You're here because your drum loop just sounds boring. It sounds like there's not a lot of variation going on, and you don't necessarily always want to use loops because even that can get pretty boring at some times, and we want to create something that's unique to us. So in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to add variation to your drum grooves. Let's dive in. We're going to be working with the session view today, and I'm going to guide you along this framework that I've prepared, starting off with the kick. So let's double click one of these cells over here. Automatically a MIDI clip is created. So we know our loop length is 3 bars. Currently, this is 1 bar though. You can see that here. Let's increase that to 3 bars. Change our fixed grid to 1/16. We're gonna make sure that we're only working with a 16th grid here. So I've created the MIDI clip. Now I'd like to choose a kick. Therefore, I'm just gonna go through my sample packs, look for a kick that sounds rather short and concise, one that gives us room for the rest of the groove. Kind of like this Afro house kick. Let's take this one. I'm going to go back into this MIDI clip by double clicking it. C3 is always going to be the original pitch of the sample. So that's exactly what we're going to go for. Since this is 4 to the floor, I'm going to place the kick on every 4th note. And I'm going to do this for the entire loop length of 3 bars. So this is 1 bar, this is 2 bars, this is 3 bars. And if we hit play on this MIDI clip, awesome. And now I'm going to add some variation to this kick groove by adding in ghost notes, or notes that have a lower velocity right before the kick hits. Not notes that are spooky. Oh God, cringe. So I'm going to draw on a note, reduce the velocity with Alt, and add one here perhaps. And since I have a loop length of 3 bars, this loop sounds rather inconsistent and more offbeat. And that's what we're looking for when we're wanting to add variation. Now let's move on to the second layer, which is tom sub. And we can see 2 bars. Let's double click this cell over here, create a MIDI clip, and we're going to look for a tom sound that is low. So a low tom. This one sounds kind of cool. So I'm going to hit Shift and Tab to move back into this panel and drag and drop my tom sound right here. I'm going to reduce the volume to make sure that it's not too loud right from the start. Double click this MIDI clip again. Loop length, let's go for 2 bars. So 2 bars of variation. Change it to 1 shot so it actually plays until the end. Cool, maybe here. Cool, and we can just take this section, duplicate it over, add some variation to the second half. Oof. Can change the pitch. Awesome. Let's move on to the next layer, which is tom high. And you can see tom high plays for 1 bar. Loop length is 1 bar, so it's a pretty consistent groove. What we're going to do is, again, double click one of these cells, hit Shift Tab to move out of the MIDI clip panel back into the effects editing panel here. You can see that I have a low cut loaded in here. That's because I want the tom high layer to be only for the higher frequencies. This is going to be more of a percussive tom sound. Again, let's go through our folders, see if we can find one. This could do the job. Again, let's select 1 shot, double click our little MIDI clip over here. Remember to stick in the 1/16th grid. We're going to work with 1/16th only. Let's hit play. Change the pitch. Oh yeah. There we go. And if I don't like the sound, I can always go back into hot swap mode and change it for another sample. Interesting. Let's continue to do this process until we find the right sound. And we can also double click this MIDI clip anytime and change the pitch as well. And if you don't want to go for a tom sound, you could also go for a percussion sound. That sounds kind of Tommy. Yeah. I'm going to do this as many times as I'd like until I find the right sound. And I really want to be precise about the sound that I use because I'm training my sound selection, right? I'm paying attention to the differences between each and every single sound. Because if I just drag in one sound from the beginning, I won't know if it's the right sound if I don't have any comparison. So try out different sounds and you'll get better at sound selection, sample selection over time. This is exactly what I'm practicing now. Cool. I like the space percussion here. So now let's move on to the next layer, which is hat main. We're going to double click the cell over here. A MIDI clip is then created. It says 4 bars. So let's create a length of 4 bars. C3 is the root note. Remember to stay on the 16th grid here. Now we're just going to look for a hat sound, a rather sharp one perhaps. Yeah, let's go for this one. Let's see if it works. So every second 8th note should be a hi-hat, right? Let's hit play. Cool. Take this section, paste it over. Take this section, paste it over, and do the same until the end of this 4-bar loop. Interesting. And now, similar to what we did with the kick previously, we're going to do with the hats. So we're going to add some ghost notes every few hats. Right here, for example, turn down the velocity, maybe tune up the overall velocity like this, reduce the volume. Go like this. Woo! Maybe create some variation like this at the very end. Going back into hot swap mode, double clicking other sounds. So this one's more stereo, interesting. Stay in hot swap mode. Interesting. Some hi-hats may sound like a stick, like a rim shot. Some may even sound like a wood block, like glass. Some sound really sharp, some sound rather soft. I'm really paying attention to the tonality of the sounds that I'm choosing. Look at this one. Interesting. This one's very sharp. It's a good kind of techie hi-hat. That's the hi-hat. Now we're going to move on to the next layer, which is the 16th shaker groove. Let's open up this guy here. 1 bar loop length, 16th shakers. So we're going to double click the cell again, reduce the volume so it's not too loud right from the start. C3 is always going to be the root key or the root note. And we're going to draw a 16th pattern. So we have to make sure that we're in 16th and draw the pattern like this. 16th, duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. There we go. Now what we're going to do is create a bit of a velocity change. So we're going to hit Command A and randomize the velocity. There we go. Now we have a velocity pattern. Pretty nice. Shakers. How do we select shaker sounds? Preferably you want to go for one that isn't as sharp as the hi-hat and that has a bit of an attack. So a bit of a slope at the beginning. Like this one. You can see the slope here, which is why I'm going to take this sample, put it right here, and I'm going to hit play. We need to shape it a bit though. Let's drag the start position right here and decrease sustain so it's a shorter sound. And since decay and sustain are interdependent, they depend on each other, I'm also going to decrease the decay a bit. And then mess around with the start position here. Nice. And now we're going to move on to the next layer, which is the Offbeat wood channel over here. Pretty weird name for a track, but this is a really important track because it's going to give us a lot of grooves. So we're going to double click one of these cells again, and we are going to change the loop length to, what does it say? 4 bars. Okay, so let's go for 4 bars. And what I would like to do is look for a woody sound. This one sounds kind of woody. Let's go for this. Now what we can do is double click. We're going to stick with C3 again, reduce the volume so it isn't too loud from the beginning. And we're going to draw a consistent groove on C3. So let me hit play. Kind of quite like this one. Let's duplicate it over. I like this, but I'd like to add some kind of note here, maybe like a softer velocity. So velocity changes always helps. Maybe go for low, high, high, low. That always helps to add groove. So we're adding different velocities, right? So like this panel, duplicate it over. And we can add some variation at the very end over here. All right, let's move on to the next layer, which is the filler percussion. Here's where it gets really interesting. The first layer is going to be only played on the first beat on a 4-bar MIDI clip. So what we're going to do is double click the cell again, change the loop length to 4 bars. And by the way, you can always mess around with the loop length of each and every single one of these MIDI clips. But I just predetermined that to have a bit of a structured video today. Let's go for a sound that sounds rather high, a high frequency sound. Let's actually go for a hi-hat maybe. Perfect. Just add this one here. And this sound's going to be only on the first beat, right? This is going to be our first beat variation. Double click the MIDI clip, head on over to C3. There we go. Shift tab to move back into the effects panel and hit one shot. Let's hit play. Cool. So this will repeat every 4 bars. There we go. What we're going to do now is move on to the next layer, which is a snare at the end of each bar. Loop length 5 bars. So we're going back into uneven grids here. We're going to double click the cell over here again, make sure that we reduce the volume a bit. What we're going to do now is change the loop length to 5 bars. Perfect. And again, I'm going to look for a percussion sound that sounds rather like a snare. Like this one. Sounds kind of like a rim shot. So I'm going to take it, put it here. And what I'm going to do is now add this snare at the end of each bar for a total of 5 bars. So I'm going to make sure I'm in 16th. This would be an entire bar. So I'm going to add the snare right here. And let's go for 3 notes over here. Add some velocity changes. Some space here. And it loops after 5 bars. Cool. Next layer, organic wood. Begin at bar 2 with a total loop length of 3 bars. Sure, let's try it out. Again, we're going to double click the cell, make sure to have a loop length of 3 bars over here. And what we're going to do is select another wood-ish type sound. Yeah, this could work. It's a nice little rim shot. Reduce the volume at the beginning of bar 2. So let's go for C3. Ooh. Cool. Maybe add another one here. Interesting. Maybe add one here too. I'm going to move on to the next layer, one of the final ones, which is delay perks after 4 bars, which is a total of 8 bars. And therefore, you can see that I have a drum rack loaded up. Double click, that creates a MIDI clip, dial it down a bit. And now instead of dragging a single one shot into one of these guys, we're going to add a variety of different sounds. And usually I just take congas or bongos. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to select all the conga and bongos from the Tulum pack, drag and drop them into the drum rack panel over here. We have to make sure that this is going to be 8 bars. Right? Because we've set the loop length to 8 bars. After 4 bars, so after 4 bars, these guys are introduced, preferably at the end. So draw in some notes, select all these notes, and then hit randomize a couple times. Maybe drag them all down here and hit play. Interesting. Duplicate this over, pitch it up. Cool. Once I have something that I like, I just simply hit record. After that, we can move back into this panel over here and enable the arrangement view. So now we're working in arrangement view. We can take our clip, put it here, make sure that it's about 8 bars or 16 bars. There we go. And then once you have your drums ready, you could also take your time. So you could go back to the original drum programming and switch out each and every single drum sound. So for example, if you don't like the kick, you can right click the sound here, show in browser, replace it with another one. If I don't like the tom sound, right click, show in browser, replace it with another one. Nice. And once we've created the core foundation, the core groove with our own samples using one-shots, being very controlling, very precise about each and every sound, we can then move on to adding loops which assist this core groove. For example, this one's cool. Drag and drop, dial it down. Nice. And to just top it off, I'm going to add some kind of a melodic pad to make it a bit more interesting. Add that to my MIDI track over here. One shot, and then I'd play the pad. Nice. You can grab all of these sounds that you heard in this video on lotustunes.com, and this project file, I'm going to make it available on Patreon. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.